Ancient soldiers poured a mysterious liquid on enemy wounds to make torture more excruciating. The enemies screamed as the liquid burned their flesh and made it foam violently. But then something impossible happened. The captured enemies who were supposed to die from infected wounds started healing instead. Their rotting flesh turned pink and healthy. For over 1,000 years, armies accidentally performed the world's first antibiotic treatments, while trying to cause maximum suffering to their enemies. But how this life-saving liquid was discovered will shock you even more than its accidental medical applications. To understand why this mattered so much, you need to know how deadly life was without it. Ancient people had absolutely no refrigeration or preservation methods whatsoever. When they killed an animal, they had only hours before it became deadly poison to consume. Families watched helplessly as fresh meat turned green and crawled with maggots. The smell became unbearable within days. Flies swarmed around rotting food. Children died from food poisoning in hours. Their small bodies couldn't fight the bacteria that multiplied rapidly in spoiled food. During famines, people faced an impossible choice: eat the rotting meat and risk death from poisoning, or refuse to eat and die from starvation. Many chose the rotting meat and died anyway. Entire armies collapsed not from battle wounds, but from eating spoiled provisions. Generals lost more soldiers to dysentery than to enemy weapons. Long journeys were almost impossible. You could only travel as far as fresh food would last. This controlled where humans could live and explore. Food spoilage determined the rise and fall of civilizations. Cities could only grow as large as their fresh food supply allowed. Then, in 5000 BC, someone accidentally made a discovery that changed everything forever. But it happened in the most disturbing way possible. Egyptian winemakers stored wine in clay jars for months. Sometimes they forgot about jars completely in storage rooms. When they finally opened them, the wine had turned sour, acidic, and smelled rotten. They thought their valuable product was completely ruined. Winemakers threw away thousands of gallons of this spoiled liquid as worthless garbage. It seemed like a complete loss. But Egyptian embalmers, desperate for better preservation methods, decided to try this spoiled wine on corpses. What they discovered shocked them. The sour liquid preserved dead bodies perfectly. Corpses that should have rotted within days stayed fresh for months. Bodies that touched this liquid didn't decay. They didn't smell. They looked almost alive. This terrified people. If this liquid could preserve the dead, what supernatural power did it possess? What would it do to living flesh? Egyptian priests declared the liquid cursed because it came from spoiled wine and was used on dead bodies. They warned that it could curse the living. Ancient armies became curious. If it preserved dead bodies so effectively, maybe it could be used as a weapon against living enemies. Ancient physicians started pouring this mysterious liquid on infected battle wounds. Patients screamed in agony as it burned their flesh. The liquid foamed and bubbled violently when it touched infected tissue. The foam turned red with blood and pus. Everyone who witnessed this believed demons were escaping from the liquid. The bubbling seemed supernatural and terrifying. But then something miraculous happened. Black, rotting wounds that should have killed patients started turning pink and healthy. Deadly infections that had festered for weeks disappeared completely within days. Soldiers who should have died returned to battle. This created a terrifying realization. The liquid that caused the most agony was somehow saving lives. Greek physician Hippocrates was the first to study this systematically. He used controlled amounts to save thousands of lives. Greek armies started giving diluted versions to soldiers to drink during long military campaigns. Soldiers who drank this liquid stopped dying from dysentery and scurvy. Greek armies could march farther than any force in history. Enemy armies couldn't understand why Greek soldiers stayed healthy while their own forces collapsed from disease. But the Romans discovered something even more disturbing about this liquid. Roman executioners used this mysterious liquid during crucifixions to make death slower and more agonizing. They mixed it with bitter herbs and forced condemned criminals to drink it before nailing them to crosses. The mixture was supposed to dull pain slightly, while extending the suffering. it was considered the cruelest form of execution. But Roman physicians studying these executions noticed something that horrified them. Criminals who drank this liquid had cleaner wounds than those who didn't. Their crucifixion injuries healed faster. Some criminals who should have died within hours lived for days longer than expected. Romans realized they had accidentally created their most effective medicine while trying to maximize human suffering. This created a moral crisis that spread throughout the Roman Empire. How could torture become healing? How could cruelty become medicine? Roman doctors started using diluted versions secretly on gladiators and soldiers. But they never forgot its dark origins. When the Roman Empire collapsed, this knowledge disappeared from Europe completely. Medieval Europeans forgot everything about this life-saving liquid. They threw it away and went back to dying from infected wounds. They watched their children die from food poisoning. They watched their food rot while the cure sat in garbage piles. Medieval physicians had no effective treatments for infection. Simple cuts became death sentences. Meanwhile, Islamic scholars preserved this ancient knowledge while Europe suffered through preventable plagues. Muslim armies used it for battlefield medicine. Islamic physicians treated diseases that were killing millions of Europeans. The difference in survival rates was dramatic. Islamic forces stayed healthy, while European armies collapsed from preventable diseases. When Europeans finally encountered Islamic medicine during the Crusades, they were amazed by treatments that seemed miraculous. They rediscovered this liquid and treated it like a brand new invention from the Islamic world. European crusaders had no idea their own ancestors had used this same liquid as a torture weapon. Today, this liquid sits in your kitchen cabinet. You use it to clean your house and preserve your food. You probably used it this week without thinking about its horrific history. The same liquid that ancient armies thought was too cruel to use on enemies. The liquid that Roman executioners used to prolong crucifixions. The liquid that could have saved millions of lives if people had understood what they were throwing away. It was vinegar. Simple wine that had gone bad and turned acidic, and nobody realized it could save lives for over 2,000 years. The liquid they threw away in disgust was actually the medicine they desperately needed. Ancient people had the cure for infection sitting in their garbage. They had the solution to food spoilage rotting in forgotten containers. Millions died from diseases that vinegar could have prevented. Armies collapsed from dysentery when the cure was being poured into sewers. The torture weapon became the healing tool. The spoiled waste became the lifesaver. And it took humanity over 2 millennia to finally figure out what they had been throwing away.